Hi, everybody. My name is Lori Williams. I am the National Director of Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign, and we're so glad to have you here for our virtual town hall tonight. We'll wait a few more moments for other guests to arrive, but in the meantime, please let us know where you're joining from by putting it in the chat. And while we wait, we're going to share a quick video with you all about the historic win in New Hampshire that we will be celebrating tonight. All right. Well, we're so glad you're all here with us to celebrate a recent string of key Beyond Coal victories, including the announcement of a coal-free New England by 2028. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Lori Williams, the director of the National Beyond Coal campaign at the Sierra Club. I live in Denver on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute nations, and I will be your host tonight. I use she, her pronouns. As we get started, I'm going to first explain the technology we're using tonight. This is a live stream town hall, which means you all can hear me and the other speakers, but we won't be able to hear you. So if you have questions that come up during the presentation, please chat them into the comments section of whatever platform you're on, and we will come back to as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion of the call. And if you prefer to have closed captioning, please find us on YouTube or Instagram. These platforms provide native captioning, and we are going to be dropping links in the chat. One thing we want to level set is just how important it is to us that this be a space held with dignity and respect. We do not tolerate harassment or bullying behavior. This is a moment to celebrate the culmination of decades of hard work and our colleagues who have made it their mission to create a coal-free New England. This moment demonstrates the power of collective action to stop climate change. Together, you all are protecting our communities across the country, protecting our air and water, protecting our public lands, oceans, and rivers, and ensuring that every single one of us, regardless of our zip code, can enjoy a safe and livable future. All right, now let's introduce our panelists. Hey, everybody. Welcome, Holly, Kathy, and Ben. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm excited for this conversation. To kick us off, I'd like you to introduce yourselves. Holly, we will start with you, then go to Kathy, and then to Ben.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lori. I'm so excited that you're our host tonight. I'm Holly Bender. I'm the Chief Energy Officer at the Sierra Club. I'm located in Madison, Wisconsin, which is the land of the Ho-Chunk people. But I was born in Vermont. And so this conversation tonight about coal-free New England is so, so near and dear to me. I'm so thrilled to be here with you. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll pass it over to Kathy Corkery.
Hello, hello. My name is Kathy Corkery. I'm the Senior Regional Field Organizer for Sierra Club in New Hampshire. And I am in Concord, New Hampshire. We're in the lands of the Abenaki Confederacy and specifically the Cowasuk Band of the Pennacook Abenaki. Thank you so much. I use she, her pronouns, and I now have the privilege of passing the mic over to Ben Jealous, our new-ish executive director.
Hey, Kathy, it's good to see you. I was up with Kathy this weekend celebrating coal-free New England. It got me back to Lebanon, New Hampshire, where my grandparents on my father's side met at the local high school. And it's appropriate that I have a bird on my forehead tonight because I'm joining you from a designated bird sanctuary in Pasadena, Maryland, my home. which is on the ancestral lands of the Susquehannock.
That's wonderful. Thanks. Well, it looks
And
like
the
they
bird
took the bird
disappeared
off.
just like that.
Yeah, where did the bird go away? That's kind of too bad. All right. Holly, would you start by telling us a bit about the Beyond Coal campaign? And while you do that, we are going to drop a link to the webpage in the chat.
Sure, folks. So those of you joining tonight may be familiar with this decades-long campaign, and you may have joined tonight not knowing a whole lot and interested in knowing more. So I want to share a little bit about the impacts of this incredible and historic campaign. So the Beyond Coal campaign is one of our 6 energy campaigns at the Sierra Club. And our goal is to transform the power sector, the way we make electricity in this country, from one that relies on fossil fuels to one that is fully powered by clean electricity, benefiting communities everywhere. We set out to retire every single coal plant in the United States no later than 2030, a date that is fully consistent with what science tells us is necessary to address the climate crisis. In doing that, we've achieved some pretty significant milestones. I'll give you some highlights right now, and then we'll really dig into learning more about New Hampshire. A couple of interesting statistics that I hope bring you hope and inspiration. New Hampshire is now the 16th coal-free state, and it's the 12th to be entirely coal-free since the Beyond Coal campaign launched in 2009. To date, there are 382 coal plants that have announced to retire. I hope that many of you on our call tonight have participated in some of those campaigns. And if you haven't, there are 148 plants to go. And we hope that maybe we can encourage you and inspire you to get involved in that work. We do this work because of not just climate pollution, but also all of the other harmful pollution that comes from power plants, things like particulate matter, soot, and smog that impacts public health and our environment. In achieving these outcomes, we have saved 54,000 lives, prevented 84,000 heart attacks, and 892,000 asthma attacks. This amounts to about $25 billion in healthcare costs saved. Retiring coal plants is not the ultimate end game. What we're really working towards is replacing all of this coal with 100% clean electricity. To date, 304 gigawatts of wind, solar, and storage have come online thanks to this campaign's work and the work of the Sierra Club and its many, many partners across our movement. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had another victory. The Tennessee Valley Authority announced intentions to retire one of its largest coal plants. So the work continues. There's a lot to celebrate and a lot to do, and I hope we can tell you a little bit more about that tonight.
Thanks, Holly. This progress is so incredible, and I'm so proud to be joining the Beyond Coal campaign. Last week, Michael Bloomberg and former EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy, both from New England, had an op-ed in the Boston Globe that I wanted to lift up and make sure everyone had seen, applauding the transition to a coal-free New England and calling the Beyond Coal campaign one of the most successful campaigns in the history of the modern environmental movement, and one of the most successful public health campaigns too. So it's something we can all be so proud to be a part of. And as many of you know, Bloomberg Philanthropies is our largest vendor, and we're so grateful for their support for this incredibly important and impactful work. Kathy, I'd like to pivot us to the recent win in New Hampshire. Can you tell us about the 20-year fight to retire these coal plants?
As soon as I figure out where the unmute button is, yes. Thank you so much. I am hugely honored to share this story with you. This story to retire Merrimack and Schiller stations. I'm joining you tonight from our chapter office in Concord, where I have an unobstructed view of Merrimack Station's smokestacks. Merrimack Station is in Bow, New Hampshire, and Schiller Station is in Portsmouth. They were built in the 50s and the 60s, And they used to burn coal all day, every day. And now they are New England's last remaining coal plants. For decades, these plants have been enormous sources of air and water pollution, risking public health and ecosystems locally and regionally. I joined the Sierra Club in 1999, and for as long as I've worked here, predating the Beyond Coal campaign, we at the Sierra Club, with national and chapter staff, volunteer leaders and supporters, local leaders, and many, many allies, have been fighting for these plants to clean up and retire. And today they are. So how did we get here? What happened? Over the past 20 years, we advocated any way and every way. We handed out petitions, we signed letters, we went to hearings. When there were no public hearings, we created public hearings. We did everything we could. And I want to highlight a few examples. In support of a 2006 bill creating a new mercury emission standard, we collected hair samples from our state legislators at the State House to show the urgency for addressing mercury from the source. These air emission standards were for the power plants. Over 100 state legislators participated, and we passed the bill. We also advocate for water protection, right? The hot water discharge from the coal plants into the Merrimack River and the Piscataqua River is deadly for marine wildlife. So we challenged the old Clean Water Act permits. And when the EPA issued weak protections, we challenged those too. Sierra Club's campaign to retire Merrimack and Schiller included the creation of the New Hampshire town energy committees. We wanted to envision what a coal-free New Hampshire would look like. And the way to do it is to have people working in towns creating that vision. And so our volunteers shared a warrant article that established town energy committees, and we passed it in town meeting across the state. So to this day, these town energy committees, and I'm sure there are a few out there, these town energy committee members are directing the local investments into energy savings and clean energy alternatives. And throughout all of these efforts, hundreds, if not thousands, of members and supporters and local allies have exercised our grassroots agency. Together, our Sierra Club community rallied and enacted real change for New Hampshire, cementing a coal-free future for all of New England. And it's so exciting. And the news just gets better. You know, I can see the dark plumes of smoke right here from the office. And I've heard many, many stories from folks in Pembroke and Elliott, Maine, who wiped down soot off of their houses and their cars. This pollution is real, and New Hampshire has had some of the highest asthma rates in the nation. 12% of the state's adults and children suffer from asthma. And the inequity of health outcomes means that our community members who are Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous disproportionately suffer from even higher asthma rates. Before 2016, Merrimack Station, as I said, it was estimated to have a lot of mercury coming out of the smokestacks. They estimated 189 to 300 pounds annually of mercury. And the closure means this neurotoxin, mercury, is no longer being released. That is huge. And that means the public health benefits for our friends, families, and communities means better health outcomes. On the water side, I fly fish. That was me in the video. And I look forward to the day when the statewide mercury contamination alert is lifted. And I think the loons will like it too. But what's next? The coal plant's owner has promised to rebuild Merrimack Station into a clean energy park and Schiller Station into a battery storage facility, making Schiller Station an important, critical place in the region's offshore wind build out. This means more green, clean energy jobs right here in New Hampshire. And with the door closed on Merrimack and Schiller, these clean energy benefits await our community and any community to liberate itself from pollution, from polluting fossil fuels. If New Hampshire can do it, you can do it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. This work is so incredible and so inspiring. And just say personally, as a mom of a child with asthma, I know what it means that you all have actually made the air easier to breathe. So thank you. What incredible work. Holly, coming back to you, can you tell us a bit about what a coal-free New England means for our nation's grid and energy sources?
Yeah, I would love to. And Kathy, I know this story inside and out, and yet every time I hear you tell it, I feel re-energized. So thank you. You've been at this for so long that it just must feel incredible to be celebrating. So thank you, and thanks for sharing it with us. I do have some slides. If you know anything about the Beyond Coal campaign and our energy campaigns at the Sierra Club, you may already know that we are a very data-informed campaign, and we have the absolute honor and privilege of having a research, strategy, and analysis department. And so I would love to use some of the work that team has done to share a little bit about how to really put the coal-free New England into perspective if we're thinking about this from a national campaign point of view. So wonderful. I covered a lot of these statistics in the opening part of our conversation, but just to reiterate, we call this slide the wedge slide. And what it's really showing you from the start of the campaign all the way on the left to 2030 on the right, the date that we know we need to be coal-free. The dark blue are the coal plants that have been retired or have planned retirement dates. And that blue part of the wedge is the work in front of us over the next several years to get all the way there. We have made incredible progress. And as we said earlier, we have 382 plants down, 148 to go. Next slide. So if you're wondering where these plants are, you can look at the shades on this map of the United States. So the darker shades are either coal-free or very close to it. And the lighter shades are places where there's still a significant amount of coal left on the grid. New England is the second region actually across the country to be coal-free, second to the Pacific Northwest. Pennsylvania is the last state in the entire Northeast region with any remaining coal. And if anyone out there is from Pennsylvania, I'm pleased to tell you we have an incredible chapter in Pennsylvania that's working really hard on that and all sorts of other really important gas and clean energy issues. I mentioned earlier, New Hampshire is our 13th coal-free state, but what I really want you to take away from this slide is that there are a few states that have yellow boxes around them. In those states, there's only 1 or 2 coal plants remaining, which means you could be the next coal-free state. We are laser focused on getting every single one of these coal plants retired, and we are so close in some really, really key places like Alabama and Georgia, where a couple of really big coal plants remain. Next slide. just to sort of zoom in a little bit across New England, Kathy told such an incredible story about Merrimack and Schiller stations, the 2 plants in New Hampshire. But when we got started, there were actually 8 coal plants operating in New England. If you added up the climate impact from those 8 coal plants, taking them offline and retiring them and replacing them with clean energy is the equivalent of taking 3.1 million cars off the road. This morning, as I was thinking about this conversation, I was wondering how does that compare to actually all of the cars in New England? It's actually almost all of the registered vehicles in all of the New England states. There are only about 4.5 million registrations across those states. That is amazing to think about all of the cars across the entire region no longer using fossil fuels. That's the equivalent of what we've achieved here. Additionally, significant impacts, as we were talking about, other types of pollution, oxides of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, many hazardous air pollutants. The specific impacts of all of these 8 coal plants being retired is 1,000 asthma attacks prevented, 117 heart attacks, and 64 premature deaths prevented. We can calculate this for every single plant, and to be able to step back and celebrate a long tenure of work, laser focused on these outcomes in a very special region like New England really starts to show you the cumulative impact of how this work adds up, community by community, state by state, region by region, until we're really talking about the entire picture nationwide. Next slide. As I started to mention earlier, the goal here is not simply coal-free. The end game is a 100% clean energy grid. A lot of what we do in the Beyond Coal campaign and across the Sierra Club is really think about how to take the fossil fuels offline, but also to replace them with clean electricity. That is such an important part of the equation. And so as we were thinking about this presentation tonight, sharing with you really this blueprint for victory, New England truly is that blueprint. And so I wanted to bring in a story from another New England state. And if you don't believe me, just leave it to President Joe Biden, who also chose Massachusetts and the Brayton Point site of the former Brayton Point coal plant to announce his climate agenda in 2022. This was right on the eve of the Inflation Reduction Act passing, but at a time when it looked like it wouldn't. And President Biden said, okay, I'm going to use the tools that I have to transition to clean electricity. And he went up to Massachusetts and he stood at the former site of the Brayton Point coal plant, a coal plant Sierra Club worked to retire. And he told the story of how this site is actually going to be now the site of clean energy manufacturing. There will be heavy duty cables manufactured there that are necessary for the transition to offshore wind. He pointed out that there will be 250 workers, as many as the coal plant ever had, even in the height of operation, and also pointed to his administration's investment in offshore wind. The Sierra Club shares these goals, transitioning sites like the Brayton Point coal plant, or as Kathy mentioned, the sites in New Hampshire, to really be the sites of clean electricity, to reuse the infrastructure that we have and tell the story of communities benefiting from clean electricity. Next slide. Both in New England and honestly across the country, we have to remain vigilant that the coal to clean electricity transition is truly that, coal to clean energy. And we know that the fossil fuel industry is waiting to seize on this moment for its expansion plans. The gas industry, the fracked gas industry, is right there. And even in a place like New England, where we have so much incredible power, long-standing volunteers and strong chapters, we face the risk that fracked gas comes and increases its presence in the region. We right now are working specifically on a project called Project Maple, a 300-mile fracked gas pipeline that would be owned by Enbridge, the Canadian company behind other pipelines you might have heard of, Line 5, several pipelines in the TVA territory in Tennessee, and the Dakota Access Pipeline. More than 3,000 kids live within 1 mile of this pipeline. And this pipeline, if built, would really erase all of the benefit that we're celebrating tonight with the 8 New England coal plants coming offline. The emissions equivalent of the Enbridge plant is 7.5 coal plants or 6 million gas cars. So in thinking about the blueprint for the work we're doing, we have to retire the remaining coal plants. We know where they are. We know how many there are, and we're inviting you into that work with us. We also know that we have to stay committed to that clean energy vision. And we're really excited about opportunities like offshore wind and in the Inflation Reduction Act to do that, while we stay ever vigilant to ensure that the fossil fuel industry does not continue its march towards expansion and is met with resistance in our communities everywhere. Next slide.
Thank you, Holly. That was wonderful. Ben, from your perspective, what does a coal-free New England mean for our movement?
Well, let's go back just for a second and talk about what this means for the country. Go back in your head to when Obama was trying to pass cap and trade and how defeated we all felt when the Congress refused to pass it. And one organization, more than any other, stood up to fill the gap. And that's us here at the Sierra Club. As a second generation Sierra Club member, I couldn't be more proud that we have stopped more carbon pollution from going into the atmosphere as of this point in history than the proposed cap and trade program would have by the same point in history. This is definitely a story of the club stepping up. It's a story of great activists like Verena Owen and Dick Fidler and visionary former staff people like Bruce Nillis and Marianne Hitt, and my predecessor way back, Carl Pope, deciding that what had been done in Illinois could be done everywhere, and going to an inspired philanthropist, Mike Bloomberg, with a really big idea and him stepping up to partner with us. This is also the story we know of countless allies, not just the members of the club and our intrepid organizers, but allies and organizations across this country. When I was leading the NAACP, one of my other predecessors, Mike Brune, approached me and asked if we would be willing to support the then nascent Beyond Coal campaign. And Jackie Patterson, who I just hired to lead our climate justice program, produced the Cold-Blooded Report, which is still quoted in the courts, is still quoted by our activists, and pulled in the NAACP across this country, just one of the many groups that have joined this campaign over the years. And this is what it takes to change the fate of the world. We must continue to build an uncomfortably large coalition, to reach out to new allies, to pull them in. And this is the story, yes, about 54,000 lives saved, as Holly said, 84,000 heart attacks prevented, 892,000 asthma attacks prevented. It's also the story of us, frankly, beginning to bring manufacturing back to this country. My family in New England has paid a price for factories shutting down across the region over the last 30 years. And one of the most exciting things at this point in history is that we're beginning to open factories up again to produce these green technologies. And we've got to finish the job. We've got to become a country that's truly energy independent. And this is how it starts. And so this story is about our club. This story is about our activists. The story is about our organizers. It's about our allies. It's about a past of people dying prematurely. And it's about a future of us being energy independent, living healthier lives, and creating more jobs.
Thank you, Ben. I think that most Americans are worried about climate change, but many people don't think there's anything they can do about it, which is a real shame. By acting locally, by pushing for coal retirement state by state and in every community in America, the Beyond Coal campaign and all of our partners, supporters, chapters, volunteers, and local action takers have achieved the coal plant closures and planned closures that account for over 80% of all US reductions in carbon emissions since 2010. You all have shown that thinking globally and acting locally works. as it's pretty inspiring stuff. So thank you all. We are now going to pivot to our Q&A portion of the program. We've been seeing a bunch of good questions come through in the chat. We won't be able to get to all of them tonight, but we will do our best to get to as many as possible. Holly, I'm coming to you with the first question. And Kathy, please weigh in if you have anything to add. So Holly, what comes next for clean energy in New England?
It's a great question, and it's imperative. We have to get enough clean electricity in New England to replace the coal plants, power our cars, our homes that are increasingly electrified, and replace the gas that's also in our electricity system. So this is the work in front of us. I am particularly interested in or excited about two things. One is really the future of offshore wind. Offshore wind is an industry that will grow and be birthed out of the New England region and in really the sort of Northeast in general. Vineyard Wind, one of the first operational utility scale clean energy projects, is now started to be up and running as it's fully constructed. And I think it's a real beacon of hope for the country and honestly for the world as this part of our clean energy industry really matures. So I am very excited to continue to support this growing industry. There's also something more specific that I wanted to share with you all. I mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act earlier, the largest climate investment ever passed by Congress, hundreds of billions of dollars to invest in communities across the country in clean energy. One of the programs, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants, are administered by the Environmental Protection Agency. Every single New England state applied for one of these grants. And so not only is there potentially money coming to New England states, and actually several New England cities separately applied, but in order to apply for these grants, you essentially needed to submit a climate plan. And so now all of these states and many of these municipalities have climate plans ready for engagement from community members and Sierra Club volunteers and partners, just like the folks with us tonight. So I would encourage you to check out the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants page at the EPA website. Really get to know what your state is planning and work with your local Sierra Club chapter to figure out how to get engaged.
Thank you, Holly. That tees up our next question for Kathy. How do I get involved in work like this?
Excellent. Please go to our website. We have a volunteer survey right on the front page, and we would love to have you. And if you are around Concord on Saturday, we are having a celebration and a new beginnings discussion in town in Concord. And we'd love to have you come. I believe the link for both are going to be in the chat. And it would be really great to meet you in person. It's this Saturday is going to be one of our first in-person celebrations that we've had in a long time. So I'm really excited to have you, and please feel welcome. Other chapters have different survey questions on their websites. Check it out, or just call. Get involved. We need more, and it takes everyone to change everything. Thank you so much for the question.
Thanks, Kathy. Holly, do you have any thoughts on what new litigation can put an end to new fossil fuel development and use of coal?
Oh, great. Well, just for folks who may not know, we have at the Sierra Club an environmental law program. I'm very lucky to work with some of the best lawyers in the business who think about this campaign work right alongside us, are just full partners in thinking about strategy and goals and how we really achieve that long-term vision. When it comes to litigation, there's lots of types of ways our lawyers get involved. We participate in public service commissions across the United States. These are quasi-judicial bodies that a lot of people don't yet know about, where decisions are made about trillions of dollars in investments in either clean energy or often utilities out there are proposing to build new fossil fuels. So a lot of what we're focused on is intervening in every single critical decision point, whether it's a state public service commission, a local siting board that may be deciding whether a new gas power plant can be sited in a community. We are also in the federal courts and in federal agencies advocating for strong pollution protections, and when necessary, defending those standards in court. That is a lot of what our attorneys do and are deeply trained in the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. And so those are some of the types of things we're doing. We're also working really hard to make sure that the conditions are there for clean energy. That means working at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and litigating there to ensure fair standards and a level playing field for clean electricity, and to ensure we can build transmission to facilitate its growth. So we have a all fronts approach when it comes to legal and regulatory work, and are just so lucky to have that team of lawyers who work right alongside us in all of this work.
It really is incredible when you think about the depth and breadth of our engagement in literally every state in the country before every public utilities commission in the country. Which leads nicely into this next question. How do I find out if coal is affecting my community? So I'm hoping our team can throw up a map of coal plants in the United States, which is a pretty nifty tool to show whether the coal plants in your community currently have announced retirement dates or have yet to be retired. I actually think we wanted a different one, but maybe we can drop that in the chat. It's coal.sierraclub.org, and then there's a coal plant map. And we also have a map of planned gas plants, pipelines, and export terminals. I'm hoping our team can also put that one in the chat. That's coal.sierraclub.org/gas-plants-and-pipelines-map. Hopefully the team can put that up so you all can see it. And so remember that your engagement is still needed even when coal plants have planned retirement dates. We need to ensure that that coal is replaced with reliable and affordable and equitably sited clean energy, not fossil gas plants. Fossil gas is just as bad from a climate perspective as coal. So we need you all, and let's be so grateful for your support to show up and support the clean energy to replace that coal. So next question, I think for Holly, were the New England coal plants replaced by renewables or gas?
It's a really good question. The answer is both, and the answer needs to be just clean energy. So what happens when a plant is retired or comes offline? It's replaced with a mix often of resources, some of which are already available on the grid, some of which might have been built specifically to replace those plants. For New Hampshire, for example, those plants will retire in a couple of years. And as Kathy mentioned, we're working tirelessly to ensure that the replacement is fully clean electricity. And if Kathy's in charge, I believe that we will accomplish that. Across the regional grid, of course, there are other resources. New England actually has a lot of hydropower as well, but also a growing set of renewable resources that, as we grow them even bigger, will not just replace the coal plants, but also the goal is to replace all of the gas plants on the grid so that it's truly 100% clean energy. So the unfortunate truth is that some of the plants were replaced with a mix as it exists today. And as I mentioned earlier, our work's not done until the grid is truly 100% clean energy. And that's the work that we continue to do every day.
Thank you, Holly. I'm gonna lob another one to you. We hear a lot about the clean energy opportunities and President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, but how can we make sure that this money is used to fight for real solutions?
Yeah, there are billions of dollars on the table, and so it matters a lot where they go. Some of the programs are really well-designed programs, and they're really well-designed because organizations like the Sierra Club and many of our partners have been advocating in the design process to ensure that the programs are really thoughtful about who benefits and to ensure things like false solutions don't make their way into the programs. What the vast majority of the resources in the Inflation Reduction Act are for really, really important things. Billions of dollars were just announced last week for advanced manufacturing facilities so that we can begin to transition our industrial sector, billions of dollars for clean electricity through tax credits and direct pay. The Environmental Protection Agency just announced $20+ billion going to frontline communities and those that are financing local clean energy projects. So I really am feeling very optimistic and confident that the vast majority of the expenditures of the Inflation Reduction Act will go to the types of things we've been advocating for. And where we have places to dig in and push harder, we're ensuring that hydrogen is truly green and clean, and that its application is to things like the industrial sector and not for things like power plants where we know we can simply transition to clean electricity. And we're working really, really hard to ensure that we keep an eye on things like offshore drilling and oil expansion, gas expansion, alongside our investments in clean electricity. So there are ways, again, to get involved in your local community to ensure that every dollar is spent on a community supporting clean energy project, like the climate pollution reduction grants and many others that I'm sure you can find out more from your local Sierra Club chapter.
Thanks, Holly. Okay, so what's next? Well, I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their insights tonight and thank all of our participants for asking such great questions. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling really inspired. As we wrap up, there are 3 ways we'd like to invite you to get more involved. First, as Kathy already mentioned, you can join the New Hampshire chapter this Saturday for a celebration of coal-free new jobs, clean air, and action on climate. You can RSVP by clicking on the link we are dropping into the chat or visit sc.org/nhwin. Next, we have a really important and time-sensitive opportunity to act to ensure that all families have clean air to breathe and water to drink. Sierra Club has submitted hundreds of thousands of public comments over the last few years, urging the Biden administration to pass major new protections against pollution. Right now, more than a dozen of them are getting close to the final stage. Please join us in demanding that President Biden and the EPA deliver on strong national solutions for pollution. Use the link in the chat or visit sc.org/BidenClimate to add your name. And on a side note, have you ever wondered why submitting individual comments is so important? We are going to be dropping a link in the chat that tells you more about why we encourage you to submit individually written comments. Finally, we can't close this evening without talking about Earth Month. There are so many events happening across the country all month long. Please text MAP, M-A-P, to 69866 to get more information about events happening near you and stay in the loop with upcoming opportunities. With that, we are going to go ahead and close. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, everyone. We know there's so much more to come as we work together to protect people and our planet. So thank you. Congratulations again on all of your hard work paying off. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Have a great night.